gardening, which if you've heard me talk at all or can talk, we love to container garden. We have a big back patio that has a very steep drop off. So we line the whole thing with pots, basically, because that kind of gives us a natural barrier, so you're not losing small children and people over the edge of it. So we use a lot of containers for that. My front patio, I have a lot of containers just because I like the containers there. It brightens up our front patio. Our house is gray with dark gray trim, so it's not very bright, but I have some beautiful red pots that help me pick up color. The thing I love about ceramic pottery is it brings in color even without plants in it. You get a lot of beautiful color just in your pots. And I don't know if you guys noticed our pot selection, but I think we have just about every color under the sun, every shape, any of that. So we love container gardening. If you've ever tried to dig in the soil around here, you also know why we love container gardening. Because you're like, bam, you need a jackhammer. So container gardening gives you a lot more forgiveness because you're controlling the environment of the plant. I frequently get asked, can I put a tree in a container? Yes, you can. You just got to make sure you got a big enough container. So there, I would say you can grow just about anything in a container, as long as you've got the appropriate size, the appropriate amount of soil around it. Container gardening gives you a lot of flexibility. We do everything from herbs to vegetables to flowers. I have a big cherry tree in a container. It does fabulous. Last year we had more cherries than we could really eat. So yes, you can grow just about anything you want in a container. When it comes to containers, kind of what we were discussing earlier, there's different kinds. You can do plastic. Plastic containers in Arizona don't hold up that well. We're dry and we have a really hot sun. So you'll probably get 2, maybe 3 years out of plastic, and then it just starts chipping. It falls apart and it cracks. The other thing about plastic is it heats up really fast. So not so bad this time of year, but come June when it's really stinking hot out and the sun's hitting and there's no clouds, it can really get hot, and you're going to have to water more frequently in a plastic pot than you would in a ceramic, just because it's going to dry out so much quicker. But plastic is inexpensive and plastic is easy to move. So I guess it comes down to how you want to use it and what works best for you. Wood containers. Wood containers are another one that have a shelf life because that wood's going to rot. They're kind of, the look is nice sometimes, particularly in some homes where you have kind of a cabiny, rustic home. The wood is very, very pretty, but it is at some point going to rot. So if you're going to put more long-term plants in there, like a tree or a shrub, you probably would want to consider something else because at some point it's just going to disintegrate. They start looking aged. Yes?
Did they ever try putting that spray seal on the inside of the planter?
The terracotta, or like a seal?
Yeah, that spray that they sell on TV where that doesn't sink when it doesn't screen on it.
I have seen people use that. He's asking about the seal where you can seal things inside so it keeps them from rotting like they do for boats and that type of thing. I have not used that. I've seen a terracotta seal where they seal the inside of a terracotta pot so it doesn't, moisture's not wicking out of it. I'm not sure I would use that with vegetables and herbs, but flowers that you're not eating, definitely worth a try. So wood can break down. So you just have to, as long as you're okay with that, there's no reason you can't plant in wood. You also get into terracotta. Terracotta is also, it's very pretty. A lot of us have used terracotta for years. The thing with terracotta here is our water is so full of minerals, you'll get white on the outside of your pot. So that's where sealing it helps. It keeps that mineral from coming through the terracotta pot because it's so porous. Terracotta also, because it is so porous, it does tend to dry out a little faster again, so you're going to have to water a little more frequently. But it has a great look. I mean, I like terracotta, especially if you're planting herbs and that kind of stuff. It has a really neat look to it. You just got to be aware. I may have to water it a little bit more, and at some point, I'll guarantee you'll see mineral deposits around it. The other, so this is kind of a new line that we brought in. I really like this pot. It's very lightweight, but it's kind of a resin concrete material. So I think it's going to hold up really, really well. I don't think it's not particularly porous, so I don't think it's going to be like the terracotta where the moisture is coming through it. But I like that it's lightweight. Because so we have some others down there, big pots, and I can lift them up and move them really easily. So this is a kind of a new one that we brought in. I'm really excited about it. I'm going to try some succulents in this bowl because it's a nice sized bowl for succulents. It does have a hole on the bottom. I can see it needs to be punched through there. So yeah, it does have a hole on the bottom. Yes.
Can it be painted so that you get colors?
I'm sure that it could, and somebody that's truly handy could paint it, but I'm not truly handy, so I would not want to paint it. I guess a can of spray paint, I could do that. But, check these out. I think they're really interesting and new. And then this, which we kind of talked about before, these are your ceramic pots. These are heavy, but they hold up for years. We literally have had pots in front of our house that are probably 10, maybe even 15 years old. They don't crack. I don't have to worry about them in the winter time. I can leave them out in the winter, even if I don't have any plants in it, and they're going to be fine. I don't have to worry about that freeze thaw. That's the other thing with terracotta, because we have that winter, we get wet and then we get cold, and your terracotta pots will start cracking and flaking. So you almost have to bring them inside in the wintertime and store them, or you're going to lose some pots. The nice thing about these heavy ceramics is they're high fired, so they're not going to crack and break in the wintertime. Any questions on pots? Yes?
On the terracotta, you said they dry out quickly. Can you put a water dish underneath that?
Yes. Saucers are hugely important, definitely. So the second thing when we talk about containers is drainage. Drainage is essential for your plants. Otherwise, what you have is a bathtub. And plants don't like bathtubs. So drainage is very important. You want a good sized hole in the bottom of your pot. People frequently ask me, can I just put rocks in the bottom of my pot for drainage? Well, you're just creating a heavier bathtub because eventually that water is going to build up. So the rocks really don't help. I know that, I'm not even sure where that got started, the whole concept of putting rocks or gravel down there. But you're better off just having a good drainage hole in there. One of the guys, you brought your, can I show that?
Sure. Rocks. I brought my rocks.
She brought her rocks. But we're not going to use them. So she brought this really cute little tin lunchbox picnic basket. It's adorable, but it didn't have drainage. So we went down, she got a nail and a hammer, and we poked holes in the bottom of it. So now we have good drainage. So this will make a really cute little planter because it's got drainage. She brought rocks, and I said, no rocks.
So you wouldn't even recommend rocks in your ceramic pot?
Nope.
I'm wasting a lot of time.
Hopefully you have some pretty rocks.
So I use screen.
Yes.
Just to keep the dirt in.
Right, so she was talking about screening material. So you can take old window screening, they even sell, I forget the name of the product, but it's like a plastic screening. And you can put that over your holes in your saucers and that, or in your pots, and that keeps your dirt contained. So as you water, I mean, dirt's gonna come out the bottom. That's just what's gonna happen. But if you put that screen over it, it really does help keep that dirt contained in there. So drainage is very, very important. If you have a pot that you just absolutely love, you think it's the best in the world and you're going to use it no matter what, go with succulents or something that doesn't require a lot of water. Because then you're not going to have, because you're watering so infrequently, it's not going to be an issue of of keeping it too wet in there, but you'll still have to watch your watering. So you mentioned saucers too. Saucers are huge, especially in the heat of the summer, because it almost creates a little reservoir underneath your pot. So under all my pots, I mean, some are clear plastic, some match the pot. I've kind of got a variety of things. But keeping that saucer under there, when you water it, you're going to water till the water goes into the saucer, and then you're going to leave it there, because during the heat of the day, that's going to start evaporating. It'll give you humidity into your plants, and it'll also wick up. The roots will actually wick that water that's laying in that saucer. It'll wick it up. So it's going to get moisture onto the roots. That will save you a lot of energy, especially if you travel or you're home, you know, if you're not home during the day, you're out and about, it can just save your plants. It's an extra little emergency reservoir for them to pull water up.
So if it's setting in a saucer which is flat, does it need those feet or toes or whatever?
The feet?
To lift them up a little bit?
I've seen it both ways. I don't think you need to. I don't use the feet. She was asking about the little foot things that go under plants, under your containers, and that helps with circulation, gets air in there. I don't use them under mine, but if you wanted to, there's certainly no reason you couldn't. It's kind of for the health of the plant. So we've covered pots, we've covered drainage. Drainage is very important. Next thing is your potting. Oh, one more question?
You can't continually just water from the bottom.
No, you do need to water from the top, because we get so dry here that if you just water from the bottom, this top's going to get dry, and it's actually the soil will pull away from the sides. And once it's pulled away from the sides of the pot, what happens is you go to water. Where does that water go? Right over the side. So once it's dried out to that point, you really, really need to soak it and rehydrate it so that that soil fills the entire pot. Because if you have a dry pot, the water just cascades right off the sides. So you've got to watch that. Any more questions on that? Okay, potting soil. Potting soil is the next big thing. Yes, I'm going to push our own potting soil. This is a great potting soil. The great thing about this, we have actually had growers test this. I'm not just tooting my own horn. This is a really good potting soil. No, it's not Miracle-Gro potting soil. I don't like Miracle-Gro potting soil. I think years ago it used to be fairly decent, but I think they have changed their formulas, and I've just seen some weird, funky things happen with it. The great thing about this is a soilless potting soil, so there's not dirt in it. It's moss and humus material and all kinds of different stuff. But it drains well. So a good potting soil, it's kind of one of those weird things. It wants to hold moisture, but it also wants to drain. If you have a soil that doesn't drain well, the roots on your plants are just going to rot. And you'll just have a soggy, icky mess. Because yes, plants want water, but they also need oxygen. So if they're just wet all the time, they're not going to be happy. So a good draining potting soil is very, very important. Next question I always get is, and I don't have any great big pots up here, but you've seen some of our pots. They're huge. And, you know, maybe you're just putting a few annuals on the top of that. The question is always, do I have to fill the whole thing with potting soil? Well, I kind of got two answers for that. Number one, if you're putting a tree or a shrub or a perennial in that pot, yes, fill the whole thing with potting soil, because that plant's going to be there a while. It's going to start rooting out. It's going to go to the bottom of the pot. It's going to fill the pot. So if you are putting a tree or a shrub, just use potting soil. It will save you so much grief later on. I get people who say, well, I'm going to fill the bottom part with dirt from my yard. Well, there's a reason we're putting stuff in containers, because our dirt is horrible. So don't do that. Just use full potting soil. If you're just going to put little annuals in, I mean, it doesn't have a very big root system. It's only going to last one season. It's an annual plant. It's not going to fill the entire length of the pot. So you could probably cheat a little bit if you're just doing annuals. And by cheating, you can use like a grower bucket or just a black bucket turned upside down in there. You can use milk jugs, aluminum cans, and things like that are just kind of filling the space, but still allow for drainage, because you still want good drainage. So my answer to that is it depends on what you're going to plant in there, whether you have to use the whole thing. Yes?
It says you can put styrofoam down there.
I've heard that. I've never used it. My thinking was styrofoam compresses, and over time, if it just keeps compressing, you know, I don't know. I've never used that, so I can't tell you, but I've heard the same thing. So potting soil, huge. Pick a good potting soil. Once you get your potting soil, there's some things you can add to it that will really, really help you when it comes to watering and taking care of the plant. The first one, so this is AquaBoost. AquaBoost crystals are a polymer. This also has mycorrhiza in it, which is terrific stuff for roots. The roots want it, encourages good, healthy root development. You can put a little bit of the polymers, when they get wet, they swell up. And then as over time, they release moisture. So it's just constantly kind of releasing that moisture. So it gives you a lot of leeway in your pots, because the moisture is going to slowly release. So if you're there again, if you're traveling, if you can't get out in your yard every day to water your container plants, using the crystals make a huge difference. The thing about these is you're still going to have good drainage, because they're going to swell up and slowly shrink and release moisture over time. There are directions on this. It tells you so much per pot size. This is one of those things, follow the directions. You know, Americans, we're always more is better, not with this product, because it will kind of swell up and ooze out, and you know, then you kind of got a mess going. So use it according to directions. You don't want to overuse it, but this is a great little product. The other thing is the all-purpose plant food. So this is your meat and potatoes food. This is a slow-release food, all natural. It's going to feed over time. So this is, I need a heavy meal, I need something just to really sustain me. This you can mix into your pots when you're doing your planting. Again, there's directions on there. So when you've got your potting soil in there, you're just going to mix a little bit of this in there. And yes, you can measure it out, or you can be like me and not measure it out. But you know, in a pot this size, you're probably putting a couple tablespoons. So I just have it in my soil, I just kind of mix it in so it's well distributed in the pot. It's not just laying on top, it's well distributed in there, and that's going to feed over time. So it's a good soil prep. Is there any questions on soil? Yes.
Oh, I have a question on the polymers.
Sure.
Is it one season?
Yes.
So then if you have perennials, you can just mix it in?
Yeah, you can just mix it into that soil on
Second
top. And that brings up another really good point, talking about soils. So the other question about soil is, do I have to replace it every year? If it's a smaller size pot, so if it's like this size or smaller, I would say, yeah, put fresh soil in every year. Because what's going to happen is, as your plants grow, you know, if you have annuals in there, they're going to die off, but you'll have the root mass in there. It's big colorful roots. Well, that's not really conducive to new planting when you put your new plants in. So if it's a smaller pot, just replace the soil. It'll be better anyway, especially if you're growing vegetables and that type of thing in it. I would replace the soil. If it's a great big huge pot and you've used all soil in it, you know, give yourself 12 to 18 inches of fresh soil in that pot. It's gonna make a difference. You know, I know people think, well, it's more money, it's more work. Yeah, but it's gonna be healthier for the plants over the growing season. So just go ahead and replace that soil in there.
That doesn't disturb the roots. Not that far.
Well, if you have perennials in there, the plants are leaving in there, I just add a little bit of fresh soil. redoing the whole pot, I would use fresh soil.
Well, the other one you just,
You're adding, because a lot of times the soil kind of compresses over time, so you do need to add fresh soil, even in your perennial containers. You want to get some fresh soil in there, very important. Any more questions? Yes?
On the plant food in the white container, I put it on my trees, but I don't mix it in. Is
Oh,
that
that's
okay?
fine.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, this is a very multi-use product. If you're putting it on your trees and shrubs in the ground, so her question was she's not mixing it in, that's fine. It's gonna break down over time and release nutrient into the soil for the tree to pull up.
So I couldn't hold my water anymore and I planted 4 pots that got bedded and so again, can I go back?
Yes, yes. So she planted some pots, didn't put it in, didn't mix it in. Her question was, can she go back and put it on now? Yes, you can. No problem at all. I just kind of like to mix it in. If you're starting fresh, you can. Yes, ma'am.
What about using dried out horse manure?
In a container,
Yeah.
I probably would not do it. Even dried out, it's probably too hot for a container. If you're going in the ground or raised bed, you got a lot more forgiveness. In a container, you don't have a lot of forgiveness. So I would just use potting soil. I wouldn't try to mix steer manure or horse manure, chicken, goat, that stuff in it. So that kind of gives you your soil prep. So it's soil prep is important because you're going to be putting these little plants into this pot. And you want them to have this little transplant shock, or you don't want them to freak out as you put them into a new pot. So what I'm going to do, okay. So I kind of got I put my potting soil in here. You can see I didn't fill it all the way to the top because you got to leave room for those plants that you're going to put in there. So you don't want to overfill it, but you definitely want to get some soil in there to get started with. Your soil should be not soggy wet, but not bone dry. This feels pretty good. It's got some moisture to it. It could be a little more moist, put a little more water in there, but you don't want it to be soggy, but you don't want it to be bone dry. You don't want to put these nice plants into dry soil because what's going to happen is you're going to water it and the potting soil is going to take up the moisture, but the plant won't. So you want them both, your plant and your soil, to be moist when you go to plant. So I've got my food in there. I'm not going to open this, but I would put my crystals in there as well. And then you start thinking about the plants that you want to have, whether you go annuals or perennials. Doesn't really matter. What I do is kind of pick out the plants that I want, or that I've already selected, and I kind of arrange them in the pot. So instead of pulling them right out of the pot first, I'm going to kind of play with it to see, maybe I got too many plants for my pot. Maybe I didn't get enough, which is a bad thing. But you kind of play with it to see, the style that you want, how you want it to look. So before I plant, I'm just playing with it. So you could do a pot from, we always say, you want to do your pots, thrill, fill, and spill. So the thrill is the something tall in the middle of the pot. It's the something that catches your eye. Pots, you need something to go, ooh, catches your eye. Why are you looking at? If it's all the same level, if it's all the same color, you're really not going to pay a lot of attention to it. It's not very dynamic. So you want something to thrill, and that's usually something a little bit taller. You can put it in the center of your pot. If you're going to be seeing this container from all sides, you can put it in the center. If you're going to have this up against the wall where you're only seeing it from one side, you pull your tall thing towards the back, which is kind of what we've done on this one. See, the front looks very, very pretty. I have thrill, fill, and spill. What's the back side? Nothing. But it's going to be up against a wall or in a corner where you're not going to see all the sides. So why waste plants on the back side? If nobody's going to see this, don't waste your time or your money on that. Put it in the front of the pot. This one I'm going to do in the middle, since that's a good example of a one-sided. We'll do this one in the middle. So I'm kind of playing with it, seeing what I like, what I don't like. And I think that looks pretty good. I got a combination of flower. I got a combination of just green. So these really aren't going to flower, but they add texture into the pot. They add a different color into the pot. So even if they don't bloom, they still add to the arrangement of it. Same with the kale. Ooh, came right out of his pocket. You know, it's not going to flower, but look at that color. Isn't that gorgeous? It definitely adds texture and color into there. So I did pretty good picking out my plants. You know, I knew the size pot I was going to use. I knew what I wanted to do to fill it. So then once you kind of have your arrangement, how you want it to look, you're going to start planting. It's coming out. So then I kind of pull them back out again, but kind of in my mind, how I want it to look. Then you start pulling them out. The other thing that I said, make sure the plants have been watered. You don't want to put a dry plant into the soil either. You want to make sure it's moist. So when they come out of the pot, they could be fairly root bound. So that looks pretty root bound. It's been in that pot, but we can loosen up those roots, because if you don't loosen them up, they're just going to kind of grow around each other. So I usually kind of pull a lot of the root off the bottom. Okay, I'm going to make a mess. Then you kind of tickle, I always call it tickling the roots or massaging the roots. You want to loosen them up around the sides so that they won't just grow around each other. So we're going to loosen those up. We're going to just pop it right in there. I have my soil at a pretty good level. If I had had it too high, I would have had to push some soil aside. Or if it was too deep in there, you want to add some more soil to give you the height. You don't want to plant things deep, but you want to give yourself an inch or two lip inside your pot. This is Nandita. This is the Gulf Stream. Also I just like the colors in it. You know, as it gets new growth, it'll have red colors. It's kind of that nice thing to fill a pot that's always going to be there, but I can change my colors around it seasonally, whether I'm growing spring, whether I'm growing summer. I can just change those colors around the perennial, or the shrub that's going to stay in it.
I'm going to ask one more question.
Sure.
That's pretty green.
Yes.
If you keep it in a pot, will it stay small?
You'd have to trim it. I mean, eventually it's going to get big, but it takes 2 to 3 years. I grew it's called a tiny towers Italian cypress, but it's not so tiny. But I grew one in a pot, I don't know, maybe 3 to 4 years, and it finally just got where I'm like, okay, that's too big. So I pulled it out this season and I'm putting something else in. But I liked it. So it was worth it to me. I mean, is it going to stay there forever? No.
How tall will it get?
I think they get around 15. But I'm not going to leave it in my pot that long. And it would take it a long time to get that big in your container. But I guess the main thing I would say is don't limit yourself. You know, I know you think, oh, this is going to get huge and it's going to take over the world. But don't limit yourself. You can try these for a few years. You're going to get tired of it. Then put something else in. But you've gotten 2 to 3 years out of it. So don't be afraid to try different. You're laughing at me. Don't be afraid to try different things in your pots. Another terrific perennial. So this is lamb's ear. Very animal resistant. So if you have animal issues, very fuzzy, very soft. The javelina hate it. The deer hate it. But another kind of one you could put on the side of your pot. It kind of drapes down, so it could be that nice spill on the side of your pot. This is a garden juniper, Japanese garden juniper. Very, very, it's going to be, eventually, it's going to outgrow your pot, but you're going to get 2 to 3 years on it. You can always trim these. But how neat to have that kind of just over the edge of your pot, draping over. It's a unique spill. Sometimes we have to think outside the box or the pot and do different things. And it's okay to do that. This is another one that I absolutely love. This is a sedum. The color stays like this year round, and it doesn't get huge. So it stays this really pretty green color year round, but it just drapes right over the edges of your pot.
What's it called?
This is, I just call it Sedum. No. This one is Lemon Ball. Angelina is the other name.
Thank you.
Angelina Sedum. But very, very pretty. So, yes.
But that's a
Succulent?
succulent, that's what it's called.
I have mixed it in very successfully with my other pots. I just always put it at the edge. So it kind of tends to dry out a little faster anyways. And when I'm watering from the middle of the pot. So I have used this very successfully in mixed containers and not had a problem with this, even though it's a succulent. Yes?
How frequently would you say it, if you did strictly low water plants in a pot, the sedums, how frequently would they be watered?
Do you have to water? So if you do just succulents in the pot, she's asking how often you have to water. It's going to change a little seasonally. I had a bowl of succulents that I left outside all winter long. They were all winter hardy. And I think I maybe watered a couple of times in the winter time. I truly kind of forgot about it. It looks fabulous. It is a beautiful bowl of succulents. So succulents maybe once a week in the hottest part of the year. Kind of depends how much sun and how much heat is going to get on it. But that's what they're, if you travel a lot, succulents are a great way to go. Okay, here's another cheater. If you don't have time to pot a lot of different things, just get a big basket and you can just pop it out and put it in your pot. Thank you. I worked hard on that. But it's an easy way to go. You know, if you don't have the time or you just don't want to fuss with it, just get a pretty hanging basket and you can put it in your pot. If you had a big enough basket, you can put that on the edge and then something taller around it. So it depends on how big your pot is. But just quick and easy if you don't have time. Herbs. Herbs grow really, really nicely in containers. A lot of these are perennials. So your rosemary, you're going to have that year after year after year. And you keep plucking on it because you're using it for cooking and that type of thing, so it keeps it contained. This is a golden oregano. I'm very drawn to this color. You guys notice that? I'm like, everything I pick has this color. But it shows up so dynamically in your containers. Because everything's green, 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 and then you have this kind of chartreuse, yellowy green. It shows up very nicely. You could mix some thyme in there. This is a French thyme, so this is more of a cooking thyme. Throw that in there on your edge. This could be your spiller in your pot. We have a new thyme that we got in. Ooh, I love this. So this is Thymus Foxley. This is a new thyme that I found for this year. It's kind of a variegated. It has very much that smell, that thymy smell to it. I don't know about cooking, but you could try it, see. But I just really loved the color on that. And that would be another terrific one to put on the side of your pot, kind of have that spill coming out. It's also got a cousin. This one's lemon. This is a lemon variegated. This one has really, if you like that lemony smell, ooh, it smells really lemony. Very, very nice. But variegated, very pretty. Doesn't have as much of a drapey feel to it as the other. Vincent, goodness gracious. But it could be a good filler, you know, because you got that thrill, fill, and spill. So this could be a good filler in an herb pot for you. The other question I get is, can you mix herbs and flowers? Why, yes, you can. Don't be afraid to mix it. It's fine. The herb's not going to care. The flower's not going to care. And they're unbreakable. This is lavender. Another great kind of filler plant. I just love the smell of lavender. So you can mix your herbs, edible, and just smelling in with anything that you've got. This one I brought up because I thought it'd be another. This is a perennial. This is in the dianthus family. But I thought this would be a good filler. And it's still going to continue to bloom all season long. But it's not going to get so tall and big. It's not going to take over your pot, but it's a really pretty little splash of color in there. Once these all pop open, it's going to be beautiful. Yes.
Is the lavender a perennial or an annual?
Perennial.
Perennial, okay.
Yeah. So yes, you know, I guess what I'm trying to say is you can easily mix your perennials and your annuals. You can mix herbs. You can mix vegetables. We have a great big container in the back that we grow tomato in every year, but we put trailing petunias in with it. So petunias are trailing over the pot, then the tomatoes in there. It has a tomato cage on it, but it looks really cool. So don't be afraid to mix things. This was another, so here's another example. There's my color again. This is a Heuchera as well. Heucheras come in so many different colors. They're kind of a shade plant. So if you have a shady porch or a filtered light area, these are terrific to use in there as fillers. But I love Heuchera. This is a spike. You've seen the spike? It makes a really great thrill because it stands up and screams at you. Mostly will not winter over. Every once in a while, perfect pot in a perfect spot gets enough radiant heat, that type of thing, it'll winter over, but not really. Could you bring it inside? Yes. You could treat it as a houseplant and bring it inside in the wintertime. But fun, for the season. And some people tell me, I don't want to spend that kind of money. It's just the season. Well, start thinking how long your season is. You've got March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October. We frequently go into November. So for 9 months, you're going to have color and pretty out on your deck or by your front door. So cost average it out. So maybe something costs $10. Well, we spread it out over 9 months. It's pretty cheap. Cheaper than a cup of coffee.
Yeah, and cheaper than buying a bouquet of flowers.
There you go. She said cheaper than buying a bouquet of flowers, and that's true because that's going to last, if you're lucky, a week, and then it's gone. So, don't be afraid to spend, especially on your perennials, because they're going to stay around year after year. So don't be afraid to spend a little more for those things that are going to be there for you. Yes?
In general, what are the water requirements on herbs?
On herbs?
Yeah.
Kind of depends. So, things like rosemary, lavender, they're pretty drought hardy, and they like the heat, and they like the sun, they like to be on the dry side.
What about that new thyme that you had? Something like
Most of your thyme is pretty hardy too. It doesn't take a lot of water. So, mixing this in with the rosemary or with the lavender would be nice because they would have all real similar water requirements. So most of your herbs, mint likes to be wet. What else likes to be wet, Cheryl? Parsley, yeah. But so kind of, if you're putting herbs in, you do want to put ones that either like the dryness or ones that like the moisture, and kind of make sure you're planting like ones together on that. So we've been doing miniature gardening and fairy gardening. That's kind of the new thing. It's really, really cute. Anyways, we got a bunch of new stuff in. If you haven't checked it out, you need to go down there and check it out. But these cute little houses, the doors open and close. You can put these into your pots. There's cute little things like little deer you can stick in there. I had one, little fairy. Little fairy you can stick in there together. So you're just leaving a little bit of space in your pot. So maybe I wouldn't have that in there. But I'd put my little house in there. And I'd put a little fairy by it. So check those out. It's kind of a really cute little thing that you can start adding into your containers. Give them a little more character, a little more fun. Especially people with grandkids. It's almost like that dollhouse concept, but with fairy gardens or miniature gardens. I'm getting some new ones in. They're not here yet. I wish they were here. But I was thinking of guys, there's one that has like a little truck set. It has all the old trucks with the old tiny trailers on the back of them. I don't know, they're really cool. And then there's a farmhouse one. But check those out, because that can add a lot of character in your pot and be fun. And then we had people that signed up to plant, and we're going to do that. Cheryl, my lovely assistant, is going to help me with that. And we've got plants picked out, and we can help you with design and all that kind of stuff. So are there any more quick questions? If not, there are people that have paid to plant. It's a $35. If you didn't pay, but you've got, maybe I do want to put one together, you certainly can. We have plenty of room, plenty of containers. It's $35. So if people brought their own container, that's okay. We're going to fill it full of flowers. If you just want to watch, feel free, no charge for that. if there's any more specific questions, we'll, terrific, I covered everything.
Oh, that's beautiful, Patrice.
Thank you. Trying to get a
You'd
mixture.
almost think you worked for a garden center.
Trying to get a mixture of herbs and strawberries and plants I love.
Oh, neat. Yeah, the strawberries are a great idea.
Yeah.
Now, where are they in there?
These are strawberries.
Oh, okay.
And here in the front,
Yeah.
so they'll put out some bright berries
Nice.
and kind of trail down a little
Yeah.
bit. Then this golden oregano will spread out.
Don't worry.
And the alyssum will spread out. So I've got thyme, lavender, rosemary, oregano, strawberries, alyssum, ranunculus, and dianthus.